congratulate the organizers of this event for their firm commitment to facilitating bilingual communication. My name is Mojde, my co-interpreter is Lars, and we represent the Tilde Language Justice Cooperative. Si usted quiere escuchar y participar en español, seleccione su canal de idioma haciendo clic abajo a la derecha de su pantalla de Zoom, en el globito si usa una computadora, o en los tres puntitos si está conectado por teléfono. Seleccione interpretación, luego español, luego picarle en Done o Listo. Y asegúrese de entrar con el app de Zoom si está en su teléfono para poder acceder a la interpretación. Esta función no está disponible en los Chromebook. If you want to listen and participate in English, and that includes hearing interpretation into English if anybody speaks in Spanish, make sure to select your language channel. Go to the bottom right-hand corner of your Zoom screen, click on the globe if you're using the computer, or three dots if you're connected by phone. Select interpretation, then click English, and then click Done at the end. If you joined on your phone, you have to make sure to join on the Zoom app so that you can access interpretation. And this is not available on Chromebook. Algunas pautas, a few guidelines. Yo estoy hablando rápido porque estoy dando la introducción en ambos idiomas, pero ustedes por favor no hablen muy rápido. Y si no están hablando, por favor pongan su audio en silencio. I'm speaking fast right now because I'm doing this introduction in both languages, but y'all please don't speak fast. And if you're not speaking, please mute yourself. Si usted es bilingüe español-inglés, no necesita escoger un canal. If you're bilingual Spanish-English, you don't need to choose any channel. Estos espacios se crean con el apoyo de todos. Por favor, comunique cualquier problema por el chat o habilitando su micrófono. Gracias. We create these spaces with everyone's support, so please make sure to communicate any issues by chat or turning on your volume. Thank you. Back to you, Tafari.
All right, thank you very much. And I am going to very quickly pass it over to the real hosts of this evening, Kamisha Smith and Mama Janice Harper, who are DSC members, movement colleagues and comrades, and just all around incredible folks. And anytime we at the Dignity in Schools campaign get to have the opportunity to be in community with the organizing work that you all are doing, we are just grateful, and to even encounter more of your work, Katie, through this as well. I just want to say, big shout out to Nolly Jenkins, big shout out to the Mississippi Coalition, the wonderful work that you all are doing. And yeah, so with that, I'm going to step to the background and toss it to Kamisha, who will take us through the agenda as follows.
Thank you, Tafari. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming in this evening to a presentation brought to you by the Mississippi Coalition to End Corporal Punishment, entitled The Last Lash. Now, if you've been a part of previous sessions that we've done, you may have heard us calling it the legacy of the lash. But as we've come to an end of the year and are reflecting on the work that we've done throughout the year as well as last year, and reflecting on the urgency of this issue to end corporal punishment, we're ending this year with the Last Lash presentation, again brought to you by the Mississippi Coalition to End Corporal Punishment. Hopefully you all can see my screen. Session overview and some of the objectives is to really create space for thought and conversation. A lot of people don't see corporal punishment as an issue because they are far removed from it, or they don't even know that it's still happening. We want to take time tonight to connect the harms of corporal punishment in a historical perspective, because it's all connected, as you will see as we get on into the presentation. We definitely want to uplift the work that the coalition has been doing. Even our setbacks, some accomplishments, our barriers, really want to be transparent with everyone on the call. And then using this space as a call to action for members, participants to join the coalition, and also to support our upcoming work for 2023. I want to encourage everyone to engage with us on social media. If you can see the screen, our handles are up. We do encourage you to use the hashtags that we will be using and we have been using throughout our campaign to end corporal punishment. One is protect students, and then the other is end corporal punishment. Of course, you can use other hashtags, but we also want you to include these so we start to or continue to get traction around the issue. Because you're here in our next steps, we do have a big campaign that is unveiling in about a week or so. So we definitely want to have a social media presence with these hashtags. We'll also drop those in the chat because this screen, we're going to go to the next slide. And then we're going to go to introductions. For tonight, I'm joined by members of the Mississippi Coalition to End Corporal Punishment.
Good evening, everyone. Janice Harper, member of the Mississippi Coalition to End Corporal Punishment. I am currently the community organizer and advocate with the Nolly Jenkins Family Center. And I'm just glad to be on this call with you all this evening to present the ongoing work that we've been doing for some time now. Actually, 2012, I will share, we've been doing this work. And even prior to that, but 2012, we've been doing this work, ending corporal punishment inside of our school district here in Holmes County. But the work is continuing and we've made a lot of strides. And so for introductions of participants, I am going to ask if you all would please put your name, your organization, and the state that you're in, and your preferred pronouns, if you wish, inside of the chat.
My name is okay.
And as you do that, I am going to transition back to my colleagues, Kamisha and Miss Katie, and they will introduce themselves. Thank you.
My name is Kamisha Smith. I am the youth program coordinator with Nolly Jenkins Family Center. I've been doing social justice work since elementary school. My pronouns are she and her.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Coates. I live in Jackson, Mississippi. I'm the Zero Waste co-anchor with Cooperation Jackson. I work with the Unitarian Universalist Church of Jackson. Also, we're growing a community garden and a well water restoration project. And I've been happy to work with the coalition since its beginning in 2019. Well, prior to its beginning, I guess. I've been around for a little while with the coalition. Happy to be a friend and close friend of the Nolly Jenkins Family Center. So I'm going to now tell you a little bit about the coalition's history. In 2012, the youth organizers with the Nolly Jenkins Family Center and students of Holmes County School District embarked on a project to address the increasing county community, including
Katie, we are having some problems hearing your audio. We actually cannot hear you right now.
Corporal punishment. That meant that people really, school board, we were able. Can you hear me?
We could not hear what you were saying. It seems like your connection is going in and out.
Not to copy, easier for me anyway. Is that it's still going in and out? I'm sorry.
No problem at all. We'll work it out. That's no problem at all. Internet issues happen. No worries at all. Perhaps can we pivot Mama Janice and Kamisha to introduce or continue this kind of conversation around the founding of the coalition and all that, and then while Katie, maybe you work out your connection and we bring you back in.
Is this any better? Can you hear me better at this point?
Keep
sounds good.
talking, it sounds better.
Okay, let me try to, I mean, I'm willing to try if you think it sounds better. I feel like I'm closer, so maybe it would work. I guess, Janice, what do you think?
We can hear you now. It did
Yeah,
not.
you sound great now.
Yeah, you sound much better, Katie.
Okay, thanks everybody. I appreciate that. And just holler at me, stop me if it breaks out again. So my name is Katie Coates. I live in Jackson, Mississippi. I work with Cooperation Jackson in the Zero Waste. We do composting and recycling. I also work with Unitarian Universalist Church of Jackson. We have a community garden, a community store we're trying to grow, and a well restoration project. And I'm happy to be a member of the Mississippi Coalition to End Corporal Punishment. Since 2012, youth organizers of the Nolly Jenkins Family Center and students of Holmes County School District embarked on a participatory action research project to address the increasing level of violence occurring in Holmes County community, including corporal punishment. After years of fighting, submitting petitions, and conducting presentations to the school board, they were able to accomplish eliminating corporal punishment in August 2018. The Holmes County Consolidated School District continues to work towards using alternatives to punitive discipline practices. Our next steps are to make sure that effective alternatives are implemented inside of schools. From this initial research, the Nolly Jenkins Family Center I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go out. Sorry about that. The Nolly Jenkins Family Center created a campaign to abolish corporal punishment in all schools and is within the Holmes County Consolidated School District, and implement effective discipline practices that create safe and healthy school environments. Early on in our campaign, we encountered a sadistic middle school and high school principal who tagged his paddle, "Take the wood or go to the hood." A combination of his physical stature, authorization of the school board allowed him to bully students and parents. It was not uncommon to step into any elementary, middle, or high school and hear the sounds of children crying from being beaten with paddle boards wrapped in gray tape to inflict greater harm. It was not an uncommon practice to walk into schools and consistently witness teachers and principals with boards underneath their arms as a visual threat to the students. In fact, we've documented a preponderance of cases where students, after having received corporal punishment, said, "She just told me to go to the office," without giving any substantive justification. I'll just say I'm noting that I was going a little fast. I'm slowing down a little bit. Thanks for your patience, everybody. The coalition was formed in October of 2020 to advance the efforts by the Nolly Jenkins Family Center at the local, state, and federal levels to eliminate corporal punishment in public and charter schools across the state of Mississippi. A call to action to the following organizations and individuals were met with a positive response: American Federation of Teachers, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Jackson, Mississippi, Families as Allies, Activists with a Purpose, Plus, One Voice, Mississippi State NAACP, Fannie Lou Hamer Center for Change, Montgomery Citizens United for Prosperity, MCUP, and Tennesseans for Nonviolent School Discipline. Going forward, the coalition has adopted an action, research, intervention strategy to push for the adoption of more effective alternative discipline strategies. We're collaborating with other organizations and individuals to extend the new ban on corporal punishment to all public school districts and charter schools throughout the state of Mississippi. Why do we take on this work? Because every day in 19 states across this country, students are at risk of being subjected to corporal punishment or the act of inflicting physical pain as a form of discipline. This disgraceful practice can result in serious physical injury, including abrasions, broken bones, bruising, hematomas, and other medical complications, and it can cause damaging long-term outcomes. Research has linked the practice in schools to poor academic performance, physical and emotional harm, and damage to students' self-esteem and to their trust with educators. In addition to being both deeply harmful and ineffective, corporal punishment is disproportionately applied to Black and Brown students and students with disabilities. Corporal punishment of children is banned in juvenile detention centers, residential treatment facilities, foster care homes, daycare centers, early learning centers, and mental health programs, but allowed in our public schools. We have to ask ourselves why. Corporal punishment is a severe violation of children's rights to respect for their human dignity, physical integrity, healthy development and education, and freedom from torture, and freedom from other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. There's more onto why we all took on this work, and Janice has got a wonderful amount of statistics and information to help this information hammer home. I'm going to pass it to my comrade Janice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie. I really appreciate that. Again, Janice Harper with the Nolly Jenkins Family Center. I will be presenting the stats and facts and even talk about the discrepancies inside of the data that is being researched and collected. Also, you will hear me repeat some of what Katie has just talked about in the introduction to the coalition. So just don't be alarmed by that. But we talk about the 19 states that continue to allow school corporal punishment as a form of discipline. And here I just want to take a moment to actually call out those states: Alabama, Arkansas, Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Missouri, Mississippi, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Wyoming. And despite the clear and compelling evidence and the research around corporal punishment and the fact that it causes injury, it is ineffective in promoting positive student behavior. It also interferes with student learning. It is used disproportionately, and it creates a negative school climate. It's linked to a range of negative outcomes for children across countries and cultures. And that includes physical and mental ill health, impaired cognitive and social emotional development, poor educational outcomes, increased aggression, and perpetration of violence. In these states, there is an acknowledgement of its harms because it is banned for children, and Ms. Katie talked about that, placed in foster care and even for foster care children while in the public school settings. Corporal punishment is banned in other settings for children: daycare facilities, group homes, and learning centers. And sadly, I need to share with you all that schools in Mississippi, which is why we continually to do the work, lead the nation in the use of corporal punishment. And that's nearly 1/3 of all students in Mississippi are hit. I'm sorry, in the state of across the United States are hit. 1/3 of all students in the US. In Mississippi, 77% of school districts hit students. 7 out of 10 girls who receive corporal punishment are Black. Yet Black girls make up only 16% of the girls in schools where hitting is used. But they make up 73% of all the girls who were hit in schools that practice corporal punishment. Black students are also hit in schools at a higher rate than white students, and that's across Mississippi. We must, and I say it again, we must undertake a whole child approach to gain an understanding of how corporal punishment is holistically devastating to young people. Its use is not only physically harmful, but using corporal punishment also negatively impacts a child's emotional and academic well-being as well. I will present you also with some research from members of the coalition that helped us with some research and share some of their findings. And a lot of the data you will be hearing from me is from the 2017, well, it is from the 2017-2018 school year. We used information from the Office of Civil Rights, the Civil Rights Data Collection, and from our own Mississippi Department of Education as well. So during that school year, 2017-18, corporal punishment occurred in at least 4 additional states that have already prohibited the use of corporal punishment. Those states are the District of Columbia, Illinois, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Corporal punishment in public schools is deeply rooted in the United States racial history. And even today, more common in regions with historic rates of lynchings. Each state that uses corporal punishment in public schools disproportionately use it against at least one marginalized community. Nationwide, corporal punishment disproportionately impacts Black students, Native American students, and students with disabilities. Black children make up 15.1% of public school students, but 37.3% of corporal punishment incidents. Children with disabilities, 13.2%, but 16.5% of incidents. For Native American children, 1%, but 1.9% of incidents. And of all Black students who have received corporal punishment, 50.5% were in the state of Mississippi, and 28.8% students with disabilities. Illinois, Black students make up 16.8% of public school students, but 73.3% of corporal punishment incidents. Then I'll share with you next about 3 or maybe 4 or 5 states in the 19 states that still allow for corporal punishment. So for instance, Arizona, Hispanic students make up 45.1%, but receive 93% of corporal punishment. In the state of North Carolina, Native American students make up 1.2%, but represent 54.7% of students who receive corporal punishment. Indiana, our students with disabilities make up 14.6% of public school students, but 43.8% of corporal punishment incidents. And I gave you stats on Hispanics, but of all Hispanic students who receive corporal punishment, 69.6% were in the state of Texas. Native American students, 74.2% in the state of Oklahoma. So again, during this 2017-2018 school year, there were more than 2,500 public schools administering corporal punishment against students with disabilities, and at least 62 public schools against preschool students with disabilities. And a lot of that hitting goes on by school personnel. And so school personnel who use corporal punishment on students, they can cause serious physical injuries and psychological trauma that requires emergency visits and even long-term care for children to heal. The risk, severe emotional and psychological harm to students, increased absences from school. It affects and impacts dropout rates. It increased the likelihood of students entering the juvenile and the criminal legal systems. Corporal punishment threatens school budgets. I did some research, and for example, in the year 2020, the Chicago Public Schools paid out $400,000 to settle 2 federal lawsuits alleging corporal punishment abuse against special education students. So our laws are needed to ensure that corporal punishment is eradicated in our public schools and also charter schools, and that all students should be kept safe at all times, at all costs. And I want to honor here a champion, Representative Donald McEachin, Democrat from Virginia, who transitioned recently. His push for the Protecting Our Students in Schools Act. He was the author of that bill. We know it as PASA. And there are also a slate of other bills at the federal level that we need to continue to support and push. CASA, Keeping All Students Safe Act, that's around restraint and seclusion. CNC, the Counseling Not Criminalization in Schools Act. And then there's also a couple of other bills, but again, that's at the federal level. So we lost a champion, but the work still continues and still move forward. Sometimes corporal punishment in schools is still used even after state laws change to ban its use. So again, laws must include clear definitions of corporal punishment and explicit prohibitions, and allow parents the opportunity to sue if the law is violated to better ensure compliance with the law. There must also be incentives for public schools to create safe school climates and to be able to enforce discipline without the use of corporal punishment. And lastly, I will share, I was doing some research and I come across this and it was new to me, but I want to share it with you all this evening. In 1867, New Jersey became the first state to abolish corporal punishment in public schools. And then it was more than 100 years before another state abolished corporal punishment and schools started to decrease the use of corporal punishment. And right here, because I've shared a lot of important information, just want to pause and just get a feel for the audience. You can put it in the chat. You can unmute yourself if you like, just to hear what are people thinking when you hear all these stats around corporal punishment and the harms to our children.
Yes, and if you would like to talk, I believe you just need to push the raise hand to talk feature, or put in the chat that you would like to talk, and that way we can accommodate that.
And again, the pause is just because that's a lot of important information, and those numbers are just unbelievable.
All right,
In terms of
we have Diana Freelon Foster. You are allowed to talk now, so go ahead and jump in, and then Betty, I have you coming right after.
I simply have a question. Is the chat disabled?
It should not be, but I will look into it.
Thank you.
No problem at all. Thank you for that. All right, Miss Betty Petty, I'm going to give you the keys to the conversation.
Good evening, everyone. I would actually say that for me, it is heartbreaking. Been in this work for a while. And when you hear students, they would call it paddling, but I call it beating our children. This then takes the mind frame for me back into slavery of what happened when our people was living on plantations. And in order to get them, in order to get the man to do the work, or he did not do it, then this is what they would do, and that is to beat them in order to make them do what they say do. And for me, with my language that I use, I say it would always to the point of, yes, massa. Yes, massa. So when we see that, and I hear of that, of what is causing and what is happening to our children, it is distilling in our children also while they are young, that it's all right when they get grown to beat your children if they don't do what you say do. So when will we see, or the question is asked, what does a healthy family look like? Because we have been so used to the abuse that is happening. What does a healthy family look like? But it is very, very disturbing when you actually see all children, but especially children with disability, and you think about when a child has a particular disability and they are acting their disability out, and that teacher does not know nor understand the characteristic of that disability, then therefore that child is being punished for acting out his or her disability, and it is absolutely heartbreaking.
Thank you so much, Ms. Betty. Ms. Diana just wanted to know if the chat was working, but thank you. So I will continue and share with you all some discrepancies and disparities around the research of the coalition and partners in the work, helping with the research. So when we talk about disproportionality and discrepancies among Black and Brown students, the coalition actually looked at data for the Mississippi schools between the Office of Civil Rights and the Mississippi Department of Education reporting data. The coalitions wanted to create a project that it would examine the relationship between race, location, and corporal punishment in Mississippi. And again, during the 2017-2018 school year. So we partnered with the University of Delaware student, Shania Anderson, who is a data analysis consulting graduate student. And the resource document that was produced was Corporal Punishment in Mississippi Schools, a critical examination of state-sanctioned violence in schools. It included information about corporal punishment and various other district-level demographic information that examined and addressed questions that Mississippi, specifically the coalition, actually had prior to her doing the research. We wanted to know, where are the highest numbers of corporal punishment incidents occurring? What does corporal punishment look like across school districts in the Delta region? And what, again, is the relationship between race and corporal punishment? So the research project was very helpful because it gave us a better understanding. When I say us, the coalition, a better understanding of corporal punishment and what it looked like in Mississippi schools to end corporal punishment and to help students across the state and eventually the nation by eliminating corporal punishment. We discovered two separate sources of information for the number of corporal punishment incidents in school district. The Mississippi Department of Education, Office of Reporting, the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, the Civil Rights Data Collection. And as we were researching and looking at this information, we thought, in theory, the numbers reported that we were seeing that were being reported should have been identical. But they actually, in fact, were very different. So the coalition then decided that we needed to continue the project by doing a comparative analysis. And while we know that the harms of corporal punishment are far-reaching, it inflicts physical and emotional harm, we also know that Black and Brown students are disproportionately impacted by the use of corporal punishment as a form of discipline in schools. And I will try to, when I have that available in the chat later on, I will put the name of that document, that resource document, link inside of the chat. But if you're interested in knowing, getting more information around updated data on the 19 states that still use corporal punishment, we also have another resource report that was done for us by the Lawyers for Good Government. That report is called Cruel Schools, the 19 states that still allow corporal punishment. So I'll be putting links after I give my presentation into the chat for you all. So in that document, some of the data I would like to share is that Black students make up 37% of the total students receiving corporal punishment, even though they only make up 15% of public school population in the United States. And according to the Office of Civil Rights, OCR, CRDC data, that same year, Black students were 2.5 times more likely to be paddled when compared to white students. And the Office of Civil Rights data is publicly available data, right? But it indicated 62,286 public school children were physically abused through the use of corporal punishment in their schools. Over 62,000 public school children were physically abused through the use of corporal punishment in their schools, a place where they go to learn and to be safe. When we looked at Mississippi in specific, the state's use of corporal punishment, the data indicated over 20,000 students received corporal punishment, which is a makeup of over 25% of all instances nationally. 12,740 Black students received corporal punishment, over half of total instances of corporal punishment in the United States. So clearly, Black students are being inflicted with physical violence at extremely high rates and are disproportionately impacted by this form of discipline. But we must hold on to and remember that every number, every data point presented here, every data point that I'm presenting here today represents the life of a child. The use of corporal punishment is entirely inhumane. And this harsh mechanism of discipline is targeting our most marginalized students across Mississippi and across our nation. And I'm going to end my segment and then I'll be turning it over to Kamisha with a quote by Mary McLeod Bethune. We have a powerful potential in our youth, and we must have the courage to change old ideas and practices so that we may direct their power toward good ends. And I'll turn it over to Kamisha. And thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings, for those statistics, those facts, and the research. So we wanted to ask why this issue and why now. I think the data clearly says why this issue and also why now. So we are addressing the question in the state of well-being of our children. It's time to rethink how we interact with children. I think Ms. Betty Petty, when she came off of mute, was not only talking about corporal punishment in schools, but also how broadly we are with children, how we love and support children. It is time to reimagine not only what learning looks like, but what the facilities, the systems, and the players within these systems look like. And then once we're done reimagining and rethinking, then it's time to take action. But we have to always make the connection. A lot of people don't see the connection, but there is always a connection going all the way back to the 1970s when data first started being collected around corporal punishment. But before we proceed into what I'm going to call a microwave history lesson, because it's going to be quick, but I guarantee the information that'll be shared as it relates to the connection of all of these issues is definitely something that's not being taught in schools. I want to share a quote, part of a speech by Malcolm X. Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the sole of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to so much so that you don't want to be around each other? In my words, who taught you to beat your children? And it's all connected, from historical lynchings to mental health, to literacy rates, to academic achievement, to corporal punishment. In a lot of these systems, we can see the direct relation in how it's rooted in oppression, systemic racism, and even internalized oppression, which we will get to when we talk about the notion of how we are with children inside of communities of color. And Black boys had the overall highest rate of corporal punishment between the 19 states that still allow it. Now, this isn't data from 2017, 2018. This is data from years ago. But just listen to the trend. So Black boys came first with the highest overall rate. Then came white boys. Then came Black girls. Then came white girls. And this trend has been consistent since data collection began in the 1970s. And it's not because Black children behaved any worse than any other children. School officials disproportionately perceive Black students as deserving corporal punishment, and then they act on this biased perception. The Southern United States has had a distinct history of racialized violence for social control purposes. And whippings have always been prominent here. I'm gonna stay here because I'm here. The whipping of enslaved Black Americans, young and old, was heavily concentrated when we think of the chattel slavery. Whipping was not just a form of punishment in that context, but an explicitly racialized socialization strategy intended to impress upon the slaves that they were, in fact, slaves. Now, schools and counties with higher rates of violence, racialized violence for social control, where physical pain has been used, are more likely to use corporal punishment and disproportionately impose that punishment on Black students today. White reformers condemned corporal punishment as a slavish form of discipline, more befitting for the Negro plantation than the Republican schoolhouse. They were fearful that white students might develop the character or temper of a slave if they were subjected to brutalization and degrading methods of discipline. This was said, this is in black and white. Reformers sought to limit but not abolish corporal punishment, considering it useful in disciplining the lower class and immigrant children entering public school systems. Sumter County representative remarked that everybody knows the character of a Negro and knows that there is no punishment in the world that can take the place of the lash with him. From the whip to the paddles to the policies, it's all connected. Lynching represents the most extreme and systemically documented form of racialized violence. Now, although lynching wasn't confined to one particular region, it was heavily concentrated in the Deep South. Mississippi, Alabama, and Arkansas are the top states for lynching, and they are among the top states for corporal punishment. We know that Southern lynching overwhelmingly targeted Black victims, not just to punish the victim, but also to terrorize Black families with the aim of maintaining white racial domination. Now, I want you to stay with me because it's all connected. From how they perceive the amount of violence or how harsh Black bodies need to be disciplined to the systems from which they are displaying this harsh discipline. Court records, when we talk about also inside of court systems, the juvenile justice system, the school to prison pipeline, court records from the 1930s reveal that court-ordered whoopings were reserved almost exclusively for Black boys and Black girls. And they felt that it was the most effective way in juvenile courts. It was the most effective way of handling delinquent Negroes. Now that turned from whippings to today's harsher sentencing in the criminal justice system. I want to switch just a little bit because we also, in this fight with corporal punishment, to end corporal punishment, we want to talk about our own, the quote I just showed by Malcolm X, who taught you? So the Black population's support for corporal punishment was, maybe still is, rooted in concerns for survival in a hostile social environment. Now, I've heard before, not directly towards me, but I've heard my aunties tell their sons, and I've heard this saying echoed throughout the South: either I'm gonna beat you or the police gonna beat you. That in itself is internalized oppression, internalized violence, internalized racism. When it comes to us and our livelihoods, choosing the less of two evils is no option at all. Now, switching again, because again, all these systems are connected and you can see where they connect. Research shows that Black students are referred to law enforcement at higher rates, are suspended at higher rates, expelled at higher rates, exposed to physical restraint and seclusion at higher rates than any other group, whether it's in schools, the workforce, or the prison systems, punishment is more readily and harshly given to people of color, especially on the bodies of Black boys and Black girls. From being used as a tool of domination and control on the plantation to being able to be used as a tool of social control and correction in our schools. And I say again, from whips to paddles to policies. On to the prison system, how we're seeing a criminal justice and being displayed. Research was done by the ACLU on the 8th largest prison system. And it confirms what of course we already know. Race shapes a person's involvement in a criminal justice systems and in the system's outcomes. Black defendants are disproportionately represented in the criminal justice system. 4 times greater rates of arrest, 4.5 times greater rates of pretrial detention, 5.5 times greater rates of conviction, and 6 times greater rates of incarceration. So with all of this, to navigate in systems that were designed to inflict pain and see my Black body as more deserving of harsher treatment must affect my mental, and it does. And so that brings us to the final alarming statistic, but also a bold question of, are the children well? Now, it doesn't help that students are being beaten in school and that state-sanctioned violence is allowed. But this is much bigger than corporal punishment. It is about effective alternatives. It is about more resources. It is about more support and services. So this is why we took on this work and why we will continue to fight. If you look at what I have on the screen, suicide rates in children has skyrocketed. Poor mental health. Approximately 1 in 3 high school students experience poor mental health to the point where they could not even get out of bed, to the point where they couldn't do their normal activities. Poor mental health, and it's not confined to just high school students. I've seen dozens of stories about elementary school students taking their lives by suicide. Now, I'm not saying this directly related to corporal punishment, but what I am saying is that it forces us to ask the question of, are the children well? And acknowledge that sending them into a system that uses violence as a form of discipline is not contributing to the well-being of students. So that was my microwave history lesson, because we realized that a lot of people don't see the connections, but they are there from as far back as slavery time, and they are embedded in a lot of these systems that we see today. So the issue of corporal punishment and violence is definitely about race. But I would turn it over to Katie, because we know these statistics. This is what drives us to do this work. So I want Katie to talk about the work that we have done within this year, and then we'll turn it over to Ms. Janice, and then we'll open it up for conversation or questions from you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamisha, and thank you, Janice. That was some really, really heavy information that was just downloaded to all of us. And I'm happy to report that we've been busy doing a lot of things. There have been a series of webinars surrounding the legacy of the lash as an education and awareness phase, because even though we know corporal punishment rates are high, people just do not see this issue. I think it might be too painful. We've had tremendous help from our partners at Communities for Just Schools Fund, the Federal School Discipline and Climate. Also, we're grateful that they've been able to create space for us and support our work. and I'm going to run through it. It's been a lot. So buckle up, everybody. We've been busy. In January, the Mississippi Coalition to End Corporal Punishment presented to the NAACP Education Committee. We had a no-hit zone training to institute zones within the community, within really as many places in the community as possible where you just don't hit. These are just no-hit zones. We partnered with Communities for Just Schools Fund to have social emotional learning training, because that in itself is a whole webinar, which the education community at large has been discussing. And there's some true irony in discussing social emotional learning within the context of 19 states still hitting children. But I'm going to get back on task. In February, we had a subcommittee hearing with the wonderful Morgan Craven on serving all students and promoting a healthier school environment. And they looked at a lot of policy issues. In March, we supported the Advocacy Day Against Violence at the state capitol. In March, we also attended and took part in the 43rd Juvenile Justice Symposium, which you can imagine there's a lot of intersectionality going on there. We also in March developed the Advocacy Toolkit, which has been useful in the work that we've been doing. In April, the National Education Policy Center held a podcast, and they discussed education with the wonderful Ellen Reddy, who was executive director of Nolly Jenkins Family Center. And they discussed corporal punishment in the lens of education, as well as other topics relevant to education. In June, we worked to gain support for the Protecting Our Students in Schools Act, which is referred to as POSA or POSSA. The coalition, along with Moving Mississippi, met with Representative Bryant Clark to gain sponsorship and support for this item. In July, the Dignity in Schools campaign, we had a workshop, and also through the Nolly Jenkins Family Center, the Youth Leadership and Development Summer Program had a Brown Girls Can Dream student-led, created, ran podcast that was very successful. In August, we took part in a healing and power building to end corporal punishment and create systemic change. That was in Texas. Ellen and Janice and a couple other members took part in that. And then we also met with Senator Gunn to continue to gain support for POSA, Protecting Our Students in Schools Act. And then in November, we met with Benny Thompson to also gain some support for that piece of legislation. And then we finished the year up with a really, really successful workshop at the NAACP Mississippi Conference in November 12th, most recently. And it was a success. We were, I think, well received. Our panel was on point with our information, and Mississippi is a hard audience sometimes when it comes to corporal punishment. So we were a little anxious, I think, and we were very well received. I'm going to pass it over to Janice to get into some of our next steps moving forward and how y'all can work with us and some calls to action. Thanks, guys.
Thanks again, Ms. Katie, for sharing all of that information. There's more. She just highlighted just some of the work that we've actually been doing. But some of the next steps and the work moving forward inside the coalition is we're looking to introduce the POSA bill in the 118th Congress, especially on the House side with the transitioning of Representative McEachin, because we want to get this passed not only at the state levels and the local levels, right, but definitely at the national level. And this bill would help eliminate corporal punishment at all levels. So we're going to continue to introduce around POSA. We're also still looking for sponsors of the bill and reaching out to those different congressmen and women. I think briefly it was Kamisha, or maybe it was Miss Katie, talked about some of the work we did with meeting with congressmen and setting up those virtual meetings to ask them to be co-sponsors of the bill. So we're going to continue that work as well. State level legislative meetings. I know that Miss Ellen has, and Kamisha, because she's a part of that lobby, is going to the Capitol. Have had the meeting with our own representative, Brian Clark, and others, with the Speaker of the House, Speaker Gunn, and also further meetings with the Mississippi Black Legislative Caucus, and just actually going in, having days at the Capitol to talk on both sides, the Senate and the House side, around even state legislation that we have inputted into. And we have submitted it, but we have not heard back, but we have to follow through on that. So continuing those meetings. The NAACP conference. Katie shared that we just recently, because it wasn't that long ago, we attended their 77th annual convening downtown Jackson, which was really great and very well perceived. And there was a panelist of 6 that was there. And our partners, Fed SDC was there to support the work as well. And afterward, there were people in the audience, and I observed the audience because I was there for support material wise and things of that nature. Um, and there were people that actually came up from the local NAACP branches that wants us now to get in contact with them to set up additional educational meetings in their cities. So doing those educational committees. Also connecting with organizations in the other 18 states to build out on our coalition campaign to end corporate punishment. And we've done the some outreach to do that. Not getting as much of support as we would like. But again, the word non-negotiable is where we stand. And so we're going to still connect with those 18 states. We do have the state of Tennessee. We have an organization in Tennessee. We have an organization in Arkansas that we've made some connection with. And recently out of Florida, if I am correct, if I'm wrong, Kamisha, correct me, out of Florida, a university student of Florida, I forget his name now, but yeah. So again, we're making that traction. So that's some of the continued next steps that we'll be doing too. And right now, as Kamisha also mentioned, we have a billboard campaign coming. So within a few weeks, our first 3 billboards will go up across the state of Mississippi in 3 locations. And we are continuing that campaign for more support funding to have more additional billboards going up across the state of Mississippi. And so that's just a glimpse, again, of the ongoing work. It's a lot. We do that. We also are still participating in our biweekly meeting. We have meetings with the Fed SDC group. We have a Mississippi Coalition Strategy Working Group. So we have been doing the work. And we're just thankful that you all have allowed us tonight to share just give you just a brief synopsis, right, of the work that we've been doing, because it's non-negotiable. We want to eliminate corporal punishment for all of our children. And I will turn it back over to Kamisha at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Janice. Oh, the last thing, so our ad is a next step. We're also meeting with the Legislative Black Caucus January the 9th. We did a workshop with NAACP and possibly are going back to do a full day kind of workshop with the NAACP around corporal punishment, since it was so well received and is looked at as an issue that, is way bigger than corporal punishment, but definitely needs to be addressed. And we definitely had some amazing panelists. I want to say thank you to them. So how you can support, of course, we have developed toolkits and have partnered to do research. It's on our website. Use our toolkits to have conversations, not only with representatives, but with your organizations to support this issue and to support our work. Sign on to our letters of support. Sign our petition, which is also on the website. Joining the coalition, especially if you are in one of the 19 states, using our hashtag, engaging with us on social media to share your thoughts, but also your experiences, because I know a lot of this may be tied and deeply rooted within us and our own lived experiences. So sharing that, as well as just continuing to support us, to reach out to us. You know, if you want to do this work or want to support the work in any way, we definitely encourage that. Share this recording on your social media sites, on your websites. It is being recorded. I think it's going to be available on YouTube, as well as our website and the Dignity in Schools campaign website. I know this was a lot of information. It was really good. I think every time that we have this discussion, because we're so passionate about it, it uplifts something different every time, and it just hits home for us. And I would just uplift the saying that's been around, that it's hard work, but it's heart work. And that's why we will continue to do it. And we're gonna open up for some Q&A and just the open discussion from participants.
So just friendly reminder for those of you that would like to speak, raise your hand in the attendee place, and we'll take questions one at a time to give our interpreters the opportunity to interpret to our Spanish-speaking colleagues and comrades, and also the other way around, if there is someone in the group that has been using the interpretation service and has a question, that can be translated back to us in English so that we can dialogue together. But just, yeah, if there are any questions or compliments or commentary, I will encourage to keep the commentary brief. But if there are questions and compliments, definitely share those in abundance for our presenters this evening. All right. Well, if there are no questions, I am going to assign just a touch of work from here for people that are watching this live. Thank you for tuning in. For folks that will check this in the future, we definitely appreciate that and the conversations that come from it. As Kamisha and others have said, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Dignity in Schools campaign as a means to connect with all of the work that you've heard tonight, and reach out, share the video, use the hashtags. It is really important and meaningful when you all share and put out the stuff that has been going on. So, you know, there are 17 people in this in the Zoom room. And if each of us share it at least once, that number will grow from there. So just wanted to again echo and thank you all for your presentation. And I see, Mama Diana, you have a question, so I'm going to allow you to talk. Here you go.
Not a question, a brief commentary in terms of Kamisha really opening this transformative process that we all need to be engaged in. And there were some of the things that she brought to our attention. One being, are the children well? If the family is not well, if the leadership in the family is not well, then how do we expect the children to be well? And so the one thing that stood out for me in terms of the George Floyd uprising, that question continued to come to me, is that, you know, are we well? So if as parents, if we are not well, then how can the children be well? And when we begin to understand that our wellness, our not being wellness is actually entangled in this whole legacy of our history, not of internalized oppression, but of, as Zakia reminds me, injected oppression. All of this that has been injected upon us, that is there. And if we can't acknowledge it, and many times we don't acknowledge it because we don't know. If you have a school system that's 97% Black, that's 80% Black, and you have no understanding of what the history of oppression in terms of America, of America's racist history. If you have no sense of what a cultural relevant curriculum looks like, and it went even with me, and I understand cultural relevant curriculum because I understand it more than from a place of what we eat or drink or do, or those particular things that we call culture, but from our history, from our historical roots, from before we came to this land, from who we were before we came here, from what was done to us, from what continues to be done to us. When you have a school, again, that's 97% Black, and corporal punishment is their strongest means, the strongest means of what they say is keeping kids under control. And those two things are not connected. Malcolm X connected those things inside of the comment, the quote that Kamisha read. Malcolm X connected all of that. But if we don't know what Malcolm X said, because the injected oppression is much bigger than what we know, our lived experiences. I watched Till last night, Mamie Till, and one of the things that happened in that movie was when they came to get Emmett, and the auntie said, don't take him, I'll whip him, I'll whip him, I'll whip him, I'll whip him. So it was really survival and trying to keep our children alive. But once we overcome that injected oppression, we don't have to take those steps, because we begin to understand that our children deserve more, that our children are not our property, but they are us. They are who we are. And so we want them to be those wonderful human beings who believe in all they are and all that they can do. And sorry for that the commentary got longer than I intended, but for me, that's a way of connecting those dots.
Absolutely. No, I shaded that. No, you are spot on. I can't put it more clearly or plainly than that. No, thank you for that commentary, Mama Diana, for sure. I see there is one more hand up, and I am not, for some strange reason, it is not showing up for me who that is. But all right, no, I think then I'll go back to the panelists and see. But no, if I think then that is
It's
all.
showing that it's telling me that two hands are raised, Miss Ellen and
Oh, it's not showing up from Miss Ellen for me. There we go. Thank you for pointing that out. There we go. All right, here you go. Miss Ellen, go for it.
Good evening. Thank you. This was a great presentation. When I initially saw the title, The Last Lash, I thought, ooh, that felt really good. So I want to commend Kamisha, Katie, and Miss Janice. You all really brought this forth tonight. I think 3 issues I want to raise. I was putting into the chat around the American community survey where they look at poverty rates for children. Y'all really should read that document. Our children are living in poverty. And when we look at where children are living in poverty is consistent with those southern states where we continue to have corporal punishment and racialized violence. The other thing I think I want to speak to, and Kamisha lifted it up tonight, and Ms. Diana too, going back.
Mama Ellen, just if you could speak a little more slowly to give our interpreters an opportunity to catch in.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I was saying I wanted to build on what Miss Diana said, just in terms of going back and understanding our history, because Malcolm X will not be taught in school. Most of the literary that we need to be reading will not be taught in school. That will come from our communities. But at the same time, you know, one of the things I want to do as a coalition member is to bring, I met a sister down in North Carolina that looks at Black SEL. How do we start to use those things inside of our own culture, the history, to support our children, to move forward? And so I just want to lift that up, that we have everything we need to move our community forward. One of the issues that's going on in Holmes County, as small as Holmes County is, there's a lot of violence going on inside of the communities. But the only conversations that are being had are bringing law enforcement into more and more law enforcement. We're not talking about, we haven't invited advocates like myself and just parents into these conversations to talk about why we have so much community violence. And Ms. Diana basically pinpointed, you know, are we well? And so if we are not well as parents, as caring village moms, as people living inside the communities, that becomes even harder for our children. I've yet to meet a child that I'm afraid of. I mean, that's not to say I haven't met some that will give me a race for my money, but at the same time, these are our children, and it's our responsibility to continue to support them in ways that they need that support. And I just, and I'm finishing here, but I do want to give a shout out. We have Dr. Pratt, who's a partner in this work from Fisk University, doing some research that we hope later in 23, about mid-23, we're going to bring all of these folk back together that really looks at issues that impact the lives of Black people and have some additional conversation. And I don't want to put Dr. Pratt on the spot, but I wish he would just lift up some of just a little bit of the research he's doing, and the impact that research could have on Black communities. So thank you all.
Thank you for that. Dr. Pratt, I did give you permission to speak if you would like. By all means, definitely hear it as an invitation, as was asked. No, good stuff.
Sure. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
So great. Thank you all for a wonderful presentation. I know that Kamisha and the whole crew did an amazing job of setting the tone. And what Ms. Ellen was discussing is we're working on some research that really dials into more aspects of the context that leads to corporal punishment. So we're also looking at literacy rates and how the concentration of literacy rates correlates with areas that still not only maintain corporal punishment policy, but have high rates of corporal punishment. And so we are finding some disproportionalities by race. But what's been interesting is seeing how what we call concentrated disadvantage is also correlating with the high rates of corporal punishment. And as Kamisha and others have mentioned, because Mississippi is what we call an extreme case, it actually has been hard to parse out what we call the variance in corporal punishment. So basically, the corporal punishment rates are so widespread in Mississippi that the racial differences don't stick out as much because it's been a racialized policy and racialized practice. White people and other groups are highly affected by corporal punishment. So what we are finding is that in schools where there are high concentration of Black students, in schools where there are a higher teacher to student ratio, that's where we see higher concentrations of corporal punishment uses and the existence of policies at this school. So it's actually looking like corporal punishment is following the Black demographic and not only impacting the Black community, but it's radiating out to other communities.
Gotta go out. Come on.
And so that's what our research is beginning to show. And we're actually in the middle of writing this paper now, working through some more analysis using a linear data from the civil rights data to data around, again, literacy rates, disproportionate disadvantage rates, and a whole host of other variables. So we can really look at this web of what are the causes and effects and the whole kind of universe around corporal punishment, so we can make an even stronger case for ameliorating corporal punishment. But not only that, better dealing with the school to prison pipeline and other issues of race, justice, and violence in the South and broadly. So thank you all for having me here, and I'm so excited to be part of this coalition and join the work in this amazing work that's already being done in multiple ways.
Thank you very much for that. And then definitely great to hear your voice, and look forward to connecting with you more, because yeah, no, that's even what you just brought to the table is really important. So thank you so much for that. Kamisha or Janice, anything you all would like to say to close us out? I know you kind of did already, Kamisha, but just want to on the backside of that share, give you all the chance to close us out proper before we call it a night.
Well, Diana Freeline Foster has her hand up again.
Oh,
So
it
if
is.
you, yes.
No, I don't have my hand up.
Yes, I'm looking at it on the screen.
Oh, I see. It didn't lower when I lowered it.
Okay. Thanks, Mama D.
Okay.
Well, thank you all for being with us on this evening. Definitely a presentation that we would love to do again in different audiences, in a different space. I would echo what Safari said about sharing this presentation, as well as interacting with us on Facebook. Continue to follow and support our work. And thank you for everyone who already does that, and enjoy the rest of your evening.